Hello and welcome to another episode of Cracking Addiction with Philippe and Naren. In the episode of Cracking Addiction today, we're very pleased to have a special guest, Steven McDonald, who will be giving us a perspective of a lived experience with addiction. Now, Steven has suffered from substance use disorder for a number of years and has gone through multiple previous rehabilitation and withdrawal unit management admissions and has kind of run the gamut of recovery-based groups and interventions. And is here today to provide us with a first-person account of living with substance use disorder, living with addiction, talking about his recovery journey, and also speaking about his excellent book, Thanks for Letting Me Share, where he has a collection of around 368 quotes, which are separated into three chapters: getting here, staying here, and a higher power, talking about his experiences and other people's experiences with addiction, recovery, and quotes to help people along their journey. So, Steven, thank you and welcome to this episode of Cracking Addiction. And I thought I'd start off by asking you to share a bit with us, the audience here, about your journey in addiction and your lived experience with addiction.
Sure. How you doing? Can you hear me
Good,
okay?
thanks.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, I started off 15 years old is when I began experimenting with substances. And it started with marijuana and then alcohol. And then as time went on, probably late 20s, I started smoking crack cocaine. And that was really what took me to places I never want to return to. And at the same time, it kind of took away my obsession to drink because it was all about getting that substance. And the alcohol, although I was still an alcoholic, uh, I didn't crave it as much because I was onto something else. So the progression of it is very evident in my story.
And can I ask what drove you to try some of these substances? Was there anything in particular that made you do that transition from marijuana, alcohol to crack cocaine at all?
That's uh, that's probably just my nature. At the time, I was pretty impulsive, a risk taker. Um, I wasn't necessarily trying to like cover up anything or hide from anything. It was more or less, I know exactly the day when I started smoking crack, I was drunk. And as a direct result of my alcoholism, I was involved in an area and with people that I wouldn't have been normally if I was sober. And so I had lost the inhibitions that had me say, let me try that. I'll try that. And that was it. It just grabbed a hold of me and never let go for quite some time.
And what was your journey going through substance use disorder and dealing with addiction? What was that like? And you mentioned it was over many years. What were those years like?
Um, First it was fun. When I was younger, it was like, wow, this feels good with the marijuana and the occasional weekend drinking. And then it got to like falling down and getting, smashing my face on cement and just, getting in car accidents. And the progression of the consequences grew as well. And they continued to grow. And there was plenty of times where I would say, whew, that was close. And then do it again. And I just didn't realize that I was an alcoholic until probably my mid 20s, but it was evident looking back on it that I was by the age of 16. So, yeah, I just kept going with it, and tried to like switch. Okay, I'm just going to drink beer, no shots, no hard alcohol. And, it never worked. All these grand ideas I had to only do so much never worked for me.
Right. And you mentioned there that initially it was fun, and then gradually the consequences were progressively ramping up, and life became less fun. I guess the question to ask would be: so, if the consequences were ramping up, why were you continuing to use substances? Because some of our audience might not understand why, if negative consequences are continually increasing, why are you doing things or using substances that are potentially only going to increase those negative consequences?
Right. The obsession to, it got to the point where I'll just talk about the alcohol, where after a hard day at work or on the weekends, it was like, okay, I want to relax. In my mind, it was like take a load off by cracking a few beers and getting that nice feeling of, oh, okay, this feels good. But I was unable to keep it there. Like a lot of people could have 3 beers and then maybe three and a half and walk away. But I just had to, once I put the substance, alcohol, crack in my body, I couldn't stop. And I kind of equate it to a goldfish. So you know how when you put goldfish food in a bowl, you can only put in a pinch, but if you dump the whole thing in there, it'll eat it until it dies. That's basically where how I equate my constant need to continue until I passed out or I ran out of money or I was up for 3 days and I was just exhausted. So once it's in me, I'm compelled to continue. and you would think after getting beat up a few a few several times that I wouldn't look forward to have, but my mind would trick me into thinking it's going to be different this time. This time I won't get as crazy, I won't black out, you know, I won't fall down, I won't get into a fight, I won't get into a car accident, I won't go to those crazy places around those crazy people. But once I'm intoxicated or under the influence, all those inhibitions are gone. So I guess the initial, from say Sunday morning when I stopped drinking to, and this is the way it used to be, I'd go all week sometimes and start again on Friday. Then those times got closer and closer, and then it became a nightly thing. So the progression of that also increased. But you would think after Sunday morning being hungover and all the consequences, oh boy, when Friday comes, I sure. But when the body heals, the liar returns, and that's one of the greatest quotes in my book because I so identify with that. And by Friday, or even if it's 2 days later, I start feeling a little better and I minimize. It wasn't that bad. Yeah, I fell down, I got drunk, I hit my head. I almost got killed in reality. A million different things could have happened. But I have this ability, and I think we all do that are addicts and alcoholics, to minimize and almost give us amnesia about the consequences. It's remarkable phenomena. I mean, it's mind boggling, but that's just the way, it's just the way
Right.
we're wired. We're wired like that.
Right. And I think you've kind of explained that really well in the sense that although there were a lot of negative consequences, and you've talked about quite a few negative physical consequences as well, despite going through that, once that had resolved, you were still craving that substance. And we've talked about briefly there the physical consequences, withdrawals, those kind of symptoms. But can I talk to you a bit about the psychological and emotional consequences? What did your substance use and your addiction history do to the relationships in your life and the interpersonal relationships as well?
They definitely were hurt. And alcohol, as I progressed throughout my life, gave me depression. And at the end of my drinking, I was depressed after it was done. Like the day after, I was just feeling like I had never felt in the past. I never felt depressed, and it just brought on this depression. But when you fast forward to the crack cocaine, that's when things got really ugly. And I took money from people that I shouldn't have. I lied. Oh well, I can't be at this event because I have a flat tire. I must have had a million flat tires in my life. Was unable to show up consistently to important things. And yeah, a lot of people frowned on that, and a lot of people um, didn't give me a pass and didn't say, "Oh, poor Steve, he's an addict," or "Poor Steve, he's an alcoholic." It was this guy. He's not a good. He's not a good. he's not a good guy. He lies. He doesn't show up when this. But they knew I had a problem. Like sober Steve and Steve drinking and drugging are two different people. I've been sober for almost clean and sober for almost 6 years. I show up consistently. I go to work every day. I got a family and I got a wife, and I'm accountable to them, and I do the things that somebody who is responsible should do. But back then, when I was using, I had a lot of strained relationships, and I've managed to get a lot of them back. There are a few that bridge has been burned, and regardless of whether I'm clean and sober or not, if they heard about it, they would just be like, "To hell with that guy." And I just that's the way it goes. But for the most part,
Right.
I've maintained to keep the friends and the family. The family, all my family still is in my life, and I'm grateful for that.
That's really great news to hear.
Yeah,
Um, can I just go back a tiny bit and just ask, what was your experience going through like the medical system and say going through detoxes and rehabs?
sure.
How did you find those facilities and the healthcare professionals that you dealt with?
The professionals were great. The people that do that work are saints, and they deal with some difficult situations, difficult people, and they were very helpful. And I gained a lot of knowledge and inspiration and motivation from the people I met. And I've been to several treatment centers across America, and every employee I've ever known that's worked in one has been great. The thing about uh, cocaine, crack, and powder cocaine is that in order to get into a detox over here, you have to be addicted to something that the withdrawal can kill or hurt you, like opiates or alcohol. So if you're an addict for on cocaine or crack, you have to get drunk before you can get into the detox. You can't say I'm a cocaine addict, I need a detox, and then from detox you go to a rehab. So you have to actually get drunk, go in there, even if you're not an alcoholic, and say your problem is alcohol. And you can also say, yeah, and I do cocaine too. When in reality, the person's entire problem is not alcohol, it's cocaine or crack, but they won't let you in a detox for that. And I think that's just ridiculous because you can do a lot more damage, you know, being an active crack addict than an alcoholic, I believe, in
Mm.
society. You can do a lot of more. You can do a lot of damage to yourself. Neither one of them are picnics, but I just don't. I find that remarkable that they won't allow you to detox from a psychologically addicting drug as opposed to a physically addicting drug in this country.
Mm.
And so many
And
times
can
I
you
had to just
talk?
get. I'm sorry.
Oh no, no, go for it.
I was just saying, all the detoxes I had to go to, I had to get drunk before going there. And when it was towards the end, when it was all about crack, I didn't even drink. I hadn't drank in years, but I
Right.
had to drink to get in there.
Mhm. And can you tell me a bit more about your journey to recovery? What motivated you to go on this path to recovery? Was there a specific incident, or was it just repeated encounters with healthcare professionals, or repeated attempts at detox and going through rehabilitation facilities?
What it was the people that I met that had been clean and sober for multiple years, either whether they were the people that work in the treatment centers or the people that ran the sober houses I lived in, or even the people in the NA and AA meetings. I believed them. Like when when they were telling their story and when they were sharing that they were the way I was. And now I look at them and I just saw men of integrity. I saw men that were carrying themselves with confidence. They looked you in the eye and I believed them. And I said, well, all these people, it can't be a coincidence. And I saw them in multiple states. I saw them in California. I saw them in Connecticut. I saw them in Massachusetts, Tennessee. And they all had this same kind of calm, serene, quiet confidence about them, but their lives were a train wreck, just like mine was. And I'm like, this is there's something to this. This is not a coincidence. And they all did the same thing. They all had the same, very similar methods to stay clean and sober. And a big part of it was they hung out with each other. The we suffer in isolation and we heal in community, and that's very true. And so, like they say, we need to change people, places, and things. Well, these guys did that, and I said to myself, there's no reason why I can't be doing that. And so, even though I struggled and I kept going in and out, in my heart of hearts, I knew it was possible. And there were times I had doubts. Maybe it's possible for them, but not me. But that was the disease talking to me. But I never quit coming back because I knew the answers were in there. I saw it. I believed them So I kept coming back and I kept coming back. And I'm telling you, when I picked up uh, white key tags and beginner chips, I could fill a car with them. Uh, and I'm grateful because a lot of people, you only get so many life rafts, and you never know which one's going to be your last. And I think I got more than most by the grace of God, and I'm just grateful. I'm very grateful because
Mm.
you know could have gotten a lot
Right.
worse.
And I think, Stephen, what you've told me really resonates in that with a lot of the patients that I see, a few of the things that you've mentioned seem to be almost near universal in the sense that interacting with people with lived experience is really important to the patients that I see, and seeing other people and hearing their journeys has been really useful to a lot of my patients. But also that community that's trying to support you and help you. In from what I've seen, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but addiction and substance use can be a very isolating experience. You leave a community, and then the substance and the addiction is the primary thing in your life. And then recovery is about reconnecting with the community and bringing people around you to support you and collectively lifting, lifting yourselves up per se, so that we can aid in that recovery process. Is that a fair statement at all, or
That's
do you
exactly
agree with
right.
that?
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. It's critical for me to speak with and associate with like-minded people that are doing the right things, that are working a program of recovery, that go to meetings regularly. Because if I get away from that, then my brain will start telling me, oh, a drink sounds like a good idea. It's been almost 6 years. Oh, why don't you can stop after spending $20. You can go get $20 worth of that crack and you'll stop. And that's, that's a lie. But if I don't continually hear these things that I hear in meetings and listen to people talk to me, like my sponsor, I'll go back to that old way of thinking. Like there's no doubt in my mind. And so I need this community daily. This isn't something I can get away from because the liar will return and I'll believe him. And I have no doubt about that.
Out of all the things and processes you've been through, and you mentioned you've been through many detoxes and rehabs before, was there any particular technique or recovery method that you found the most useful for you, or the things that resonate with you? Because I've heard a lot of different patients say a lot of different things. Some people really love AA, some people don't like AA, some people like smart recovery, some people don't like smart recovery. So you can insert the name of almost any program. But have you found anything particularly useful for yourself on your journey to recovery?
I enjoy the meetings and I go to both NA and AA and I qualify for both certainly, but the message is similar and I really enjoy it. Like when I leave a meeting, sometimes I don't want to go. Sometimes something good is on TV, or sometimes it's cold out and I don't want to get in the car. Or, there's a million other. eh, But once I leave, I'm grateful that I went because I always hear something that I feel like the person was speaking to me as opposed to speaking about themselves. And so that and a combination of step work, which has really given me a new perspective on a lot of things that I was blind to before I started working the steps. Um, and once again, speaking with other recovering people because they'll give me, I'm mad at something and I'm talking to them about something and this happened at work, such and such, and then they'll give me a different spin on it, and I'll be like, wow, I didn't think of it like that before. And so couple those three things together: community, meetings, and step work, and also staying involved, getting a commitment, being a coffee a coffee maker or a door greeter. That keeps me going to those meetings. I have a commitment. I got to show up for that. So, and I need that. I need to be held accountable. It gives me a sense of responsibility, and it gets me there. And I've never left the meeting wishing I didn't go. Never.
Excellent. And I think you're just hammering home that point of community. A slight segue in what I'm going to talk about now is, I guess, especially here in Australia, there's a lot of stigma around addiction and there's a lot of stigma around substance use. Have you experienced any of that yourself? And has that impacted your willingness to seek treatment or impacted how ready you were to share your story with other people?
Yes, it has. Because I do feel that people think addict and they think thief. I do think people think alcoholic, they think sloppy drunk, driving drunk, loud, boisterous, rude, crude, fall down, sloppy. So, and those people are going to think like that regardless. And so I try to keep my anonymity away from people who I feel I'm not sure how they're going to take it. So, but at the same time, as I've gotten older and I've stayed in recovery longer, that doesn't bother me as much as it did in the beginning. In the beginning, I didn't want anybody to know. But now I'm okay with it because I know this is a disease. Like, I know that. Most people know that. And those that don't know it just are ignorant about that. So I'm not morally bad. I'm sick, and I will get sicker if I continue to go back to my old ways. So it's not a moral issue. I mean, granted, we do some not so great things when we're under the influence, but the fact of the matter is, I have a disease. I'm treating it. I'm a much better man than I was prior, and I'm proud of myself. So you can judge me all you want. That's fine because I know where I came from. I know where I am now. And the people that love me and my friends that know me are proud of me because they've seen the transition. And those that don't know, they don't need to know. I don't necessarily get on the hilltops and yell, "I'm in recovery." But when it's when it's I think it might benefit somebody if I'm in a conversation, and I'll bring it up. I work in a prison, and sometimes I don't actually go out and let them all know that I'm in recovery, but sometimes it's relevant, and I share a little bit of my story just to let them know that I know what a struggle is like, and I don't struggle anymore in those areas. So if I can help somebody with my story, I will. But I don't necessarily go around and tell everybody my story because there are those that will look down. And when I was using, then I was definitely looked down on because I would bum money outside of gas stations. I looked the part. I was skinny. I was dirty. And, when someone sees an active addict, they just really turn their nose down at them. And I get that. We're not the the nicest people to be around when we're active.
And what made you motivated to write your book, Thanks for Letting Me Share? What was it that made you want to share these 368 quotes with other people and mail it out to the audience that it has now?
When I first got introduced to the rooms of AA and NA, and when I was in the treatment centers, we're talking 2003 was my first experience with recovery, my first rehab. And I heard some things, and some of them I've heard a million times since, but they were new to me and powerful and profound. And some of them were funny, and some of them were very, very wise. And they just like really resonated with me. So I always liked to write as a kid, and that was one of my bucket lists is to be a published author. And so I said, wouldn't it be something? And I thought of the name of the book way back then. I think this was a God inspired thought, to be honest with you. If I, because I was still kind of groggy. If I get a thought like that that's beneficial to other people, I believe it's a God inspired thought because my thoughts usually are about self centered. Steve, what's best for me? So way back then, when I got that thought, wow, I should write a book. I know exactly what I'll call it. Thanks for letting me share. And I will put I'm a big fan of quotes. I love historical quotes. I will put all these, and I started taking them down. I put them in my phone. I would write them down. All these powerful quotes I've heard from people in the rooms, from people out on coffee breaks, from the guys in the sober house, things that just resonated with me and moved me. And then during the pandemic, I said, you know something, now's the time. And I took all my notes and I put them together, and I got on Amazon KDP, and I published it. And now I take these books and I send them to treatment centers all across the United States. I sent out a whole bunch today, and it feels good. No drink or no drug has ever made me feel as good as when I send these books out, because I feel like there's some guy or some woman in some treatment center who's never heard this stuff, and I'm like to think it'll plant a seed with them, because it sure did with me.
Mhm. And your hope is that this book can kind of serve as a catalyst for other people who may be thinking about trying to start the path for recovery. Is that what you're hoping the book does?
I am. I'm hoping that the book reaches people that are new, have never heard. Because if you've been around for a few years and you've been in meetings, you've probably heard 30% of the quotes in this book. 70% are unique to the people that said them, and they were powerful. But there are ones that, if you do what you always did, you're going to get what you always got. I've heard that a million times. But when I first heard it, I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of these quotes are simple but yet profound. So my goal was to put it out there for people that A, have time under the belt so they can read that first chapter called Getting Here, which is about the insanity and the madness behind addiction and alcoholism, and remember how it used to be. Because sometimes one of the quotes in the book says, when we have a lot of time, something along the lines of, when we are ripe, we start to rot, and when we're new, all this stuff comes in like, wow, I never heard that before. And so I was gearing it towards the newcomer, but also the people that have been around for a while that can read that first chapter and remember and say, wow, that was crazy, and I never want to go back there. So I think it can reach both people that have been around for a while and people that are just coming in. And I really think, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback from my friends in recovery that have read it.
Excellent. And you've mentioned your journey of recovery was many years in the making, many times through many different detox and rehabilitation facilities. Do you feel that each step there, instead of, I see a lot of patients where you go through a detox, and you may go to a rehab, or you just do a standalone detox, and say there's a lapse or a relapse, people can get quite negative and feel that they'll never progress on that path to recovery.
Yes.
For you, how long did you find it took to stick? And was it just one of those things where it was just like one step in front of the other and we just keep going and see what happens? Or what was your path to recovery like?
So I would go to a treatment center, I would get out, and I would relapse soon thereafter. And then I left one treatment center, and they said, this whole going back to your life that you had before treatment isn't working. How about you go to a sober house? So I said, all right, I'll try that. So I went there, and I did better there, but I would still veer off, and I always veered off alone. I was always by myself. I got a bright idea, and I would go and use. And then when you use in a sober house, you get kicked out. So I had a lot of those, driving around with my car full of everything I owned in it, until I could come up with the money to get into another sober house. And so I did a lot of that. And then I would go back when things got really bad and I was starving and broke and I had nowhere else to go. I'd go into treatment. So a lot of times these treatment centers helped me get out of this rut, but at the same time, it was almost like and I'm looking back on it now, and I didn't like when someone told me this at the time, but I was taking a break. I was just kind of taking a break, getting healthy again, physically. And then my mind would start thinking towards, so if it was a treatment center for 30 days, by day 20, I'm obsessing about using again, but I'm not telling anybody. Or if it was a 90-day treatment center, when that clock was ticking and I knew I was getting out soon, I was like a horse at the starting gates, but I kept it to myself. I didn't tell anybody. And that's another critical thing is I need to tell on myself when that bright idea comes. And fortunately, the bright idea doesn't come anymore. I don't get the obsession to use has been lifted from me, thank God. So I don't get that bright idea, but I know if I do, I need to expose it. And in the past, I never exposed it, and I would just try to fight it myself, and I would always lose.
And it sounds like this path to recovery has also been a path of a bit of self realization for you as well. You've seems to clearly have identified some of your thought processes and some of the triggers for you, and you've seemed to have put in place like a lot of contingency plans or safety mechanisms so that there's a decreased chance of lapse or relapse. Do you also find that sometimes not treating the lapse or relapse as a major deal also helped as well, like not putting too much pressure on yourself?
So, can you explain that a little bit more? You mean after a
As in,
relapse?
do you find I find sometimes if when a patient say lapses, they can be so hard on themselves that a lapse becomes a relapse versus acknowledging the lapse for what it is and realizing, okay, this happened, and maybe I should take a few more steps to make sure it doesn't happen again. I find people can be quite negative in their thinking sometimes, and sometimes that can kind of trigger a more severe form of relapse per se. Has that
Okay.
happened to you at all?
Sure. There's been times where, like I said, I would do a 90-day program, and you would think after 90 days I'd have my head a little clear. And there was one particular time, the day I got out, I used. The day I got out after 90 days, and I was always a model citizen in rehab. I did all the work, but I got out. So there were times I just thought, yeah, this might work for all those people, but it's not going to work for me. Like I'm different, I'm unique. Like this disease really has got a hold on me. I know it got a hold on you, but it's got a worse hold on me, and that's a lie. That's not true. But I would convince myself, so that would give me an excuse to just keep going. Like I'm never going to get this, and but my phone would ring because I had friends in recovery, and I would get phone calls, I would get text messages, and I knew where the answers were. Like in my heart of hearts, I still knew that the answers were back in those rooms, and I would eventually drag myself back there and surrender again. And so yeah, there were times where I was defeated,
Mhm.
and during those times, thank God, I had men in my life that didn't stop reaching out to me and let me know, hey, we're here when you're ready. And I knew it, and I would go back eventually. But yes, I beat myself up many times just saying I'm not one of these guys that's gonna be able to do this.
What do you think's been the most important thing on your path to recovery? If you had to put one thing down.
Today, it's my immediate family. I'm married, and my wife has two sons, and so I have two stepsons, and we all live together. And it's the fact of the matter is, I would let them down, and I would let myself down something terrible if I was to go back to my old ways. And the disappointment could be unbearable. Like, I don't even want to know, like, I know guilt and I know what it feels like to have self loathing, but this would be a whole nother level. So I've built myself a life where I live with people I love. I'm consistent. When I say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm there. I come home at the time I'm supposed to come home. All these things that we do that we don't do when we're active. And I'm not willing to roll the dice anymore. I'm not willing to risk losing what I have today. In the past, it didn't matter so much to me, but and I believe that's another, like, my higher power has put things in my life that are just, like, looking back, they're miraculous.
Hmm.
And putting me together with my wife and my stepsons is a big part of why I stay.
And I guess to wrap up, Stephen, if you have one last message to leave our viewers and listeners with, what would that be?
I would have to say, if you're struggling, don't ever quit, because this is possible. This is possible, but you can't do it alone. That's my message. Reach out to the people that are doing it and stay with them. Don't veer off, and tell on yourself. There's nothing wrong with telling on yourself, because everybody understands. Yeah, I think like that too. I understand how you think. And if you're an addict or an alcoholic, we are a lot alike. I don't care if you live in New Zealand, if you live in Alaska, or if you live in Brazil. We have a lot. I'm more like the people in the rooms of AA and NA than I am the friends I grew up with that I've known my whole life. I have more of I identify with you as opposed to someone who isn't an alcoholic. I heard my thoughts coming out of their mouth when I first came in here. So yeah,
Excellent.
stick with like-minded people.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Stephen. And I think your story will resonate with a lot of people. And I guess it does show that although every journey is different and unique, there are some overlying truths with regards to addiction and substance use disorder. And I think from what you've said, consistency, getting an appropriate community around you, and not being isolated are kind of those kind of main triggers on the path to recovery. So thank you again, Stephen, for sharing your journey with us on this episode of Cracking Addiction. So to our listeners and viewers, I hope you appreciate what Stephen has shared with us. Thank you for listening to us, and bye for now.